This is a shir in Likutei Sichos, Chelek Zayin, the 16th book of Likutei Sichos, the Sicha of Tetzaveh, which is Tetzaveh, and it's also titled Zayin Adar, the 7th of Adar, as we will discuss. And it has a little asterisk at the bottom to Zayin Adar, and it says that this is the concept of Zayin Adar is on the first Adar. As the Rebbe quotes, well, we're going to be talking, let me just say this in brief. There's two others this year, right? There's Adar Rishon and Adar Sheni. There's various halachas that apply that we have to know the distinction. When is the real Adar, in other words? So when it comes to Bar Mitzvah, definitely we do the Bar Mitzvah in the second Adar, unless the Bar Mitzvah boy was born in the first Adar. The year he was born was also a leap year. When it comes to the birth and passing of Moshe Rabbeinu, so then we follow the majority opinion in the Achreinim that say we should go according to the first Adar. Now it's interesting that the Gemara itself, Masechta Sotah, speaks about the first Adar as being that the year Moshe Rabbeinu was born. There's an opinion that it was a leap year. And also, the Rebbe brings here in the Ha'aris that there's a Yalkut Yeshua, there's a Medrash that says that also the year that Moshe passed away was a leap year, and Moshe passed away in the first Adar. There are opinions that it should be done in the second Adar, but the Rebbe says since there are the majority opinions say we do it on the first Adar, so therefore we do the according to the Rama. Certainly, we do put him on. We do the remembrance of Moshe Rabbeinu, the passing. That's the main way we remember him, which the Rabbi will address in the Sikha. Some people have a minute to have a fast. It's done in the first Adar. Okay, so it's known that in the Zayin Adar, the day of passing of Moshe Rabbeinu comes out in most years close to Parshas Tetzaveh. So we're now at Zayin Adar. Actually, I'm taping this on Zayin Adar. It's Tuesday. It's Tuesday within the week of Tetzaveh. Shabbos is going to be Tetzaveh. And as it says in Svarim, the Rebbe brings this from Eirei Naim. I believe this is from the Chernobyler, Mordechai Chernobyl. And it says that this is a hint for the fact that in Parshas Tetzaveh, when Moshe Rabbeinu was born, in Parshas Shmos, where you read about Moshe's birth, till the end of the Torah, there's no parsha in the Torah where Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not mentioned. This Parshas Tetzaveh, Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not mentioned, which tells us that it's related. In other words, hinted here is that Moshe Rabbeinu is no longer, because Zayin Adar, he passes away, and this is hinted at the Shabbos after that, or the parsha right near that date. Says the Rebbe in footnote 2, you may know what it says in the Zohar. This is not in any conflict with what it says in the Zohar, that when Moshe Rabbeinu says to Hashem, if you don't forgive the Bnei Yisrael, please wipe me out of the book. And indeed, therefore, even though Hashem Taka forgave the Jewish people, but when a Chacham says such a thing, even if the stipulation is not fulfilled, but still there's something happens from that. So what happened from that is that Moshe Rabbeinu's name is taken out of one parsha of the Torah. That's what the Zohar says. This seems to be a different word. This seems to be that the reason Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not there is because it's the Stalkus, the passing of Moshe. It says no stira, because the fact that it's Dafkin Parshas Tetzaveh is because of the proximity to Moshe Rabbeinu's passing. The Rebbe says because we find only this saying of Moshe Rabbeinu, Mecheni, now take me out of the book. It's in two parshas, in Parshas Kitisa. So regarding when it took place in the actual timeline of history, but we see it in two parshas for now. Parshas Kitisa, the taking Moshe's name out of the Sefer could have been in later parshas. The fact that it's in Tetzaveh tells us also that it's Moshe Rabbeinu's passing, hints at Moshe Rabbeinu's passing. So also this also fits with what it says in the Magen Avraham that in a leap year, like in this year, the tinus of Zayin Adar is in the first Adar. Some people have accustomed to fast on the 7th of Adar, commemorating Moshe Rabbeinu's passing, and as we'll talk towards the end of the Sikha, what this means, not because it's a sad day, but it's because it's a powerful day. So, but it's done. When is that fast day done? In the first Adar, because So this fits, because if we're saying that Tetzaveh alludes to Moshe Rabbeinu's passing, so in a leap year, Tetzaveh is going to be in the first Adar. So we have to understand, Zayin Adar, the seventh of Adar, is also the day of the birth of Moshe, as the Gemara says, that Hashem sits and calculates the days and fills in the years of the tzaddikim. Should be from day to day, from month to month, should be an exact amount. So we know, so Moshe Rabbeinu passes away exactly on his 128th birthday. So why, if we're commemorating Moshe Rabbeinu's lifetime, why are we only in Parshas Tetzaveh commemorating his passing and not his birth? It's also his birth base. Simply, we could say that also the passing of Moshe Rabbeinu is hinted in the parsha, because the name of the parsha is Va'ata Tetzaveh, and you, who's you, Moshe, you should command the Bnei Yisrael to bring oil. And since the name of the parsha also denotes the whole content of the parsha, the name is the heading. So it comes out that the whole parsha also is a reference to Tetzaveh, which is you should command. The whole parsha really talks about the presence of Moshe, together with the absence of saying his name, but it's also a very strong presence. You shall command, you Moshe. Even according to the opinions that don't call it Va'ata Tetzaveh, they call it Tetzaveh. So Va'ata would be a you, which is going on Moshe. Tetzaveh should command. Even though we call it Parshas Tetzaveh, it's the minig. Nonetheless, it's still an expression speaking to an individual. It's an instruction. You shall command, and that comes as a continuation. Who's the you shall command? The previous parsha it said Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, "And you shall command." And who shall you command? Aaron, your brothers. So obviously, Tetzaveh, you shall command, is going on Moshe. So his presence is very much felt in the name of the parsha. However, just left to understand, how do those two allusions fit with each other? On one hand, the parsha doesn't mention Moshe Rabbeinu's name at all, which shows that in the parsha, Moshe Rabbeinu's presence isn't there. On the other hand, every word of this parsha is called "You shall command," does allude and show the presence of Moshe. So how do those two things go together? The day, the birth and the passing, and the way it's expressed in the parsha. Gimel. So we'll understand it first. To understand what's the concept of the tinus of the fast of Zayin Adar. We have to understand, why did they make Zayin Adar just a day of fasting to commemorate the passing of Moshe? Hey, what about the birthday? What do we find in the Gemara? The Gemara says like this: when somebody says he wants to be like Moshe on the seventh of Adar, so this is in Masechta Nazir. We're talking there about the laws of somebody becoming a Nazir, and how does one indicate that he's taken upon himself the vow of the Nazirite, the vow of being a Nazir. When somebody says, "I want to be like Moshe on the seventh of Adar," what does it mean? Does it mean that he's taking upon himself to be a Nazir? And Tosfos explains the question. What does it mean? Does it mean that he's going to be like Moshe on the day of his birth, and there was a big rejoicing, or Moshe Rabbeinu on the day of his passing? On the day of the passing of Moshe Rabbeinu, many people took oath to become a Nazir, because they were so pained. One of the way of expressing the pain was they won't touch wine anymore, they won't cut their hair. So what happens if a person says, "I want to be like Moshe on Zayin Adar"? In other words, I want to be like in the state of what happened when Moshe passed, with Moshe on Zayin Adar. What does it mean? When Moshe was born on Zayin Adar, when Moshe passed on Zayin Adar. So we see that it's not so clear what Zayin Adar is. Yeah? Zayin Adar was also a day of joy. I mean, we see in the and we see interesting. I mean, when Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, does the birthday get canceled? So the Rebbe puts in Adar 16, we find that Yitzchak Avinu's birth is still celebrated way after he passes, because Hashem thought maybe the Mishkan should be dedicated on the day that Yitzchak was born. In other words, the birthday of the tzaddik doesn't go away after it. We see this from Yitzchak. We know this clearly. And we're going to deal with this even more later. So why do we only talk about being a day of a fast? We see clearly that the Gemara says, if you want to be like Moshe on the Zayin Adar, does it mean fasting or does it mean feasting? Interesting, Deborah points out, you may remember that What do you mean that they rejoiced on the day of his passing? Everybody rejoiced. It said they had to hide him, right? Um, so, l'chayra, maybe they only hid him from the Egyptians, that suggests. Maybe the Jews made a big party, but they had to hide him only from the Egyptians. Al Kopanim, we see that it's also a day of joy. Now the Rebbe has a square bracket. It says like this: you can't say that. What is the suffix, the Gemara here? Does he mean this is exactly as the suffix? Does he mean Zayin Adar, the way it is after Moshe passed? And that means it's a day of not joy, he accepted upon himself to be a Nazir. Or does it mean Moshe Rabbeinu, Zayin Adar, when he was alive, when there was a birthday? And then it's a day of Simcha. However, if he would mean the day of birth now, post Moshe's passing, then obviously it's a Nazir. In other words, the Gemara is saying, what did he mean? I want to be like Moshe on Zayin Adar. Before he passed or after he passed? And after he passed, Zayin Adar, even as the birthday, is going to be a day of anguish. Rabbi says you can't say that. Because by the Dodim, when you're talking about vows, the law is you have to go after what the way people speak, the vernacular. Now, people speak, when a person says Zayin Adar, now, so long after Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, he doesn't mean I want to be like Moshe on Zayin Adar then. He means now, I want to be like Moshe on Zayin Adar now. Nonetheless, the question is, Moshe Rabbeinu, the way he's reflected in the joy of now, because it's still now also his birthday, or the way Moshe Rabbeinu is reflected in the anguish of now, because it's his day of fasting. There's still a question. There's two things we see in the Gemara. There's two aspects of Zayin Adar. So the question is, why do we only mark the anguish aspect? And so, and as the Rebbe quotes in the Hadassah, in the footnotes, that the day of his birth makes it a day of joy. There's a more. The question is greater for those that want to be ma'ayin a little bit more. Very interesting Ha'ara, or at 20, where the Rebbe says there's another aspect of Moshe Rabbeinu's day of passing. Even if you talk about Zayin Adar's day of Moshe's passing, he was also happy on that day, because when he gave the Sefer Torah to the Leviim, the Bnei Yisrael said, "Hello, what's with us? They're in charge of the Sefer Torah. You're giving it to your people, nepotism, so to speak." And Moshe Rabbeinu was so overjoyed. He says, "You guys want? No, I have a Torah for each tribe, but I'm so happy today. You became a people. Today you wanted the Torah of your own volition. Wow, I'm so excited." So maybe that's the simcha of Zayin Adar. The Rebbe says that's not connected to Zayin Adar. That would be like just like we don't make a simcha on the day the Bnei Yisrael came to our Sinai. There was Vayichan Shom Yisrael, or it doesn't become a Yom Tov forever. Although the Rebbe actually would always remember that day. But or the Rebbe gives another thing that we Taka don't make a deal out of. When the Bnei Yisrael brought too much for the donations of the Beis Hamikdash, Mar Bimam, they had to sell them stop. That's an unbelievable thing. They bought so much, but this doesn't become a permanent Yom Simcha. So the Rebbe says this Bepashtos, the Zayin Adar, the fact that he was happy on that day because of something incidental, because he saw the level they had reached to, that's not to do with Zayin Adar. So still, that wouldn't take away this question we're asking. The point we're making, even after Moshe Rabbeinu's passing, the birthday is exciting. So why are we only making a commemoration halachically for the passing? The question is even greater. The Gemara says in Megillah that because when Haman saw that the lottery that he did, it came out on the month of Adar, he became very excited and he said, "Oh, this is the month that Moshe Rabbeinu died," and he didn't know that on Shiva Ba'adar, on 7th of Adar, Moshe died, and on 7th of Adar he was born. But later on, was the Rebbe, the end of the Sikha, we're going to answer another simple question. What do you mean he didn't know it was the day he died? He did know. What we're saying is he didn't know it was also the day he was born. But for what's mashma with the Gemara is that he was excited because he knew it's the month he passed, but he didn't know it's the month he also was born. And what happened? For the Gemara is mashma, it comes out clear that the fact that he was born on the 7th of Adar overpowered the day of passing. And that's why the day gets transformed. He didn't know that this month is also the birth, and the birth has the power to transform the whole month. So you see that the birth is more powerful than the passing. So you see and that goes to Purim for all the generations. Especially as Rashi really says it, Kedaihu Yom HaLeida, the day of birth is worthy, is powerful. Sheyichaper Alam Yisrael, it atones and cleans up, so to speak, for the day of passing. So we understand that it's a day of Simcha. So why don't we Bechal? Why are we only? Why is the only minute connected with Zayin? Oh, they got to do with the fast. Dalit. So we'll understand this first by understanding the words of the Gemara. Let's understand about Marbim B'Simcha. It says the same way the Mishnah Nasav Marbim B'Simcha. Similarly, no, sorry, the Gemara says differently. It's a Gemara in Masechta Tainis, which speaks about the morning of the month of Av. The Gemara says it's the same way that when the month of Av comes in, you decrease in Simcha. Similarly, when the month of Adar comes in, you increase in Simcha and joy. So now the question is, the concept of increasing in joy, is it when it's a leap year? When does it start? Start in the second Adar, or does it also start in the first Adar? Very interesting footnote here, and I hope Mitzvah Hashem to tape an addendum to this year, and that is the Rebbe quotes Mishnich Nasad Ma'arvim B'Simcha. It's brought in the Magen Avraham. Why isn't it in the Rambam? Why isn't it in the Shulchan Aruch? Be a separate Mitzvah, a separate little shir. So l'chayda, we could explain l'chayda. This is to be explained according to Rashi that says, what is this? When, in other words, let's understand: is it applied to other Rishon or only we start other Shady? What does the Rashi say? Rashi says that when month of Adar comes in, we have to rejoice. Says Rashi, why when the month of Adar comes in do we rejoice? Yemei Nisim, these were days of miracles to the Jewish people. Purim and Pesach. Days of miracles of Purim and Pesach. Well, Purim and Pesach is only another Sheni. When is Purim? We celebrate Purim, the second Adar, according to all opinions. And Pesach comes right after that. Actually, the way we know that we do Purim, the second Adar, is because we bring it close to the next redemption of Pesach. However, you could say that from what Rashi says, that's no proof that it only applies to the month of Adar, which has Purim. On the contrary, we're going to see the opposite, says that. First, let's ask a well-known question. What does Rashi bring Pesach here? What has Pesach got to do with it? When Adar comes in, we increase in joy because of Purim. Why does Rashi say because of the days of miracle, also Pesach? So there are opinions, says the Rebbe, that say that Rashi wants to forewarn and answer a question. Why do we increase in joy just because of one miracle of Purim? Why don't we do it for Pesach? Why are we only telling us, why are sages telling us increase in joy for Purim? What about Pesach? It's a big miracle. So Rashi says, and also Pesach. When Adar comes in, we start rejoicing because of Purim and Pesach. In other words, it's Adar, and then it continues in Nisan. The Rebbe says it's difficult to say like that in Rashi, because if Rashi wants to tell you a new thing, and this would be a practical thing, that in Nisan, month of Nisan, you also have to be Marbim B'Simcha. The Gemara just says Adar. There should be a big chiddush of Rashi. Rashi should have said it clear that the Simcha continues through Nisan, and not rely on a remez, on a hint, because he added a word. Especially the Rebbe says in the 31 that we know that when you say a halacha, you got to say it clearly. Also, according to this, one second, this is not the only. If it's got to do with the miracles, Purim, Pesach, that's not the only month that has miracles. What about Kislev, which has Chanukah? And on the contrary, since Chanukah is only rabbinic, we know there's a concept. Some people have this notion if it's rabbinic, it's less. No, rabbinic. So there's a concept that divrei seifim tzirich and chizuk, that things that the rabbi said, they made it more stringent because it needs to be bolstered and strengthened. It shouldn't be taken lightly. So if so, it should be even more important to have simcha and Chanukah, even more than Nisan, because Nisan is divrei Torah, it doesn't need to be strengthened so much. Even more than Purim, because Purim is divrei Kabbalah, it's the words of the prophets. It's the Esther is part of the canonized Bible. It's part of the Tanakh, right? It's part of the words of the Nevi'im. So it's stronger than Chanukah. So Chanukah, we would need to strengthen even more. So why don't we insist that when month of Kislev comes, because of Chanukah we have to have joy. And by the way, just in case you're going to say, well, Chanukah doesn't really have joy. We know there's a machlekes, whether there's sudas or not. So the concept of Mishanich Masidam Marbim B'Simcha is also not about su'ud. It's not about eating necessarily. It's not about joy. So Hanukkah, that would be okay. We have to be joyous. The others learn that. So if Rashi means to say we have to be joyous also in Nisan because of Pesach, then what about Hanukkah? So if we just say, in other words, it's got to do with Purim, something special for Purim, okay. Purim is different. Purim was a big miracle. Things got transformed. We got saved. But once you say it's Purim, and then and if you want to learn that it also applies to Pesach because there was a miracle in Pesach, so why not Hanukkah, for example? The others, so that's a question. So it's difficult to say that pshat in Rashi that Rashi's saying you start from Adar, you continue whenever there's a miracle also to Nisim, because otherwise that should be also applied to Hanukkah. So others learn what does Rashi mean to say when he says Mishnichnas Adar, that because of the miracles of Purim and Pesach. That Rashi means since the month of Adar we had a we had miracles ritzufim utekufim zelazeh in proximity and in continuation, like pushed close together. There's a continuum here, Purim and Pesach. So that's why, because of that intensity of miraculous chain, a month of Adar comes in, we increase in joy. Kislev, you don't have this continuum of miracles. You have Hanukkah. In other words, when you have, wow, boom, a couple of miracles together, that creates an intensity which brings you to have simcha already for the whole month of Adar and Nisan. But that also would require explanation, because what's the connection in content between Pesach and the month of Adar? So just because Pesach comes in proximity to Adar, that's why in the beginning of the month of Adar you already have to have simcha. What's the what you call? What's the intrinsic connection between them? Yeah, and as Rebbe points out in the footnote, even if you want to say that there's somehow this continuum of miracles brings us to the strength of the simcha, which will start already in the month of Adar and continue to Nisan. If that's what Rashi's saying, Rashi should have said it clearly. It's a big chiddush. Hey, so the explanation is like this. The Gemara says when the month of Adar comes in, you have to increase in joy. That from the immediately from the beginning of the month, and the Gemara gives a practical application. Therefore, if a Jew has a judgment, he has to go to court with a non-Jew, he should try and get out of it for the month of Av. Don't go to court in the month of Av; it's not a good time. And try and see to it that the make himself available for the judgment, for the court case in the month of Adar. Start the month of Adar, even from the beginning of Adar. Why? Because body mazle, the mazel then is healthy. Now we want to understand l'cheira. The miracle took place on the 13th of Adar. The 13th of Adar was supposed to be the pogrom, was supposed to be the killing. And the miracle happened that we got permission to fight back and we were victorious. So why does the simcha start from the beginning of Adar? And even though you'll say, well, look, when did the miracle really start? In a way, it started way before the 13th of Adar, because as we read in the Megillah, on the month of Sivan, the 23rd of the month of Sivan, that's when Achashverosh sent out the new revised, or the new royal edicts, that the king is giving permission to all the Jewish people to congregate and to self-defend. That was already the miracle started then. But one second, whichever way you look at it, it's still going to come to the month of Adar. Why? Because the signing of this new edict was in the third month, but that still didn't mean the Jews were out in the clear. It gave them an opportunity to fight, but they still hadn't done the deed. They still needed to actually have a battle, which and they were still in danger of their life, and they were still the enemy was still fully intentionally gonna kill them till they actually had that battle on the 13th of Adar. Only the 13th of Adar, that's when they had the battle. On the 14th, they were able to rest, and that's when we have Purim. So yes, they had a certain alleviation from Sivan, but that just gave them the opportunity. And we know that Alter Rebbe says that a whole year they were Mesiras Nefesh. In other words, this fear, this dread, this feeling of disaster, of impending disaster, continued with them till they actually did the battle in front of Adar. So why do we say from the beginning of the month already it's a good month? Also difficult to say, also difficult to understand. What does it mean in the Megillah, where it says that the month was turned from them from anguish to joy, that the whole month was transformed? That's why Taka did it. And the Yerushalmi says that the fact that the Megillah identifies the whole month as a month of joy, if somebody's not able to hear the Megillah on the 14th of Adar, from the beginning of the month, he's able to already hear the Megillah. And the Ramah says that that's the minig. If somebody knows he's not going to be in proximity to a Megillah, he's going to be on a boat somewhere. So from the beginning of the month, if he has a Megillah, if he has access to Megillah, he should read the Megillah. But how does this Purim take the whole month? The saving only started on the 13th. So Rashi addresses this by saying it was days of miracles for the Jewish people, Purim and Pesach, as the Rebbe is going to explain. What's the explanation, Vav? Explanation is the Gemara says the same way that when the month of Av comes in, we decrease our joy. Similarly, when the month of Adar comes in, we increase in joy. So we have to understand that the increasing in joy that we do in Adar is the same, is in the same with the same parameters of the increasing in joy, of the decreasing in joy in month of Av. It's so let's analyze now in what way is Av distinguished from other months. Well, bad things happen then. And that's why we say in the month of Ab we decrease our joy. But we find there's two things in the month that we talk about. One is that there's a repetition, a repetitiveness of negativity, of tsaros that happened. Number two, it's an inauspicious time. It's a yom chayiv. It's a day that's got negative energy. The Gemara says, how do you know that on the second? We know that the first Beis Hamikdash historically we have Psukim and the prophets that it was destroyed on Tisha B'av. How do we know the second Beis Hamikdash was also Tisha B'av? And the Gemara says that, well, there's a concept of Megalgelim Schus Liyem Zakai V'Chayiv Aliyem Chayiv, that good things happen on a good day. Bad things, Hashem makes them happen on a day that's inauspicious, it's already bad. And so this we can say is not just that it's a bad day because the first Beis Hamikdash was destroyed on Tisha B'av, that's why Hashem made it, that the second Beis Hamikdash was also destroyed on Tisha B'av. No, it would seem also earlier we already had a bad day because the Gemara says when they cried after the spies came back, they cried all night. Hashem says the Gemara says was Tisha B'av, and Hashem says you cried for no reason. Now I'm going to make this kaiveya. I'm going to make this a fixed day of crying for you. And that's why years later, almost 1,000 years later, there's the destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash, and then almost 500 years later, the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash. So, according to this comes out. So, if it's both the fact that many bad things happened and it's also an inauspicious day, the energy of the day is negative. So, also same thing with Chodesh Adar. There's miracles that happen in Chodesh Adar, and it's also a good day. So, where do we find about the month of Adar this good day aspect? So we find that the Gemara says. The Gemara tells us this. When the lottery fell out in the month of Adar, the Gemara doesn't talk about the day. The Gemara says when the lottery fell out in the month of Adar, this is an energy that was pervading the month. Haman was very rejoiced. He said, I got the month that Moshe Rabbeinu passed away. He didn't know that on the 7th of Adar, he passed away in this month, the 7th of Adar, but on the 7th of Adar he was born. So what do we see? That what brought to the miracle of Purim in the month of Adar is because the month, he thought the month was a bad month, but the month is a good month. Which part of the month? The 7th of Adar. He knows it's the birth of Moshe, which creates the energy of positivity that later brings the additional miracles of Purim. So the fact that the girl fell out on Adar actually was rescinded the gezerah, the decree that Haman felt he had because of the bad energy. The month wasn't bad energy. It's good energy. The month has good energy. So the whole month, in other words, there's an understanding that the whole month is affected here. What's the what's the achievement of Zion Adar? What's the advantage of Zion Adar? Is that the Redeemer of Israel is born. He took the Jews out of Mitzrayim. You remember the Gemara says in Seder that when Moshe Rabbeinu was born, the stargazers saw that the Redeemer is born and his downfall is going to be the water. They didn't know it was the hitting the rock. They thought water. That's why they said all boys should be thrown into the water. So in other words, the energy, he was already born, even the stargazers saw it, he was already born as the Redeemer. So that means that there's two aspects to this Chodesh. First of all, it's a month that has Zayin Adar, the day of birth of Moshe. And it's also a day where there was a recurrence of miracles and redemption. Where's the recurrence of miracles and redemption? There's only one, Purim. No, because Zayin Adar has within it the birth of two redemptions. Going out of Egypt, first of all, and also the redemption of Purim. So now we can understand why Rashi says Purim and Pesach, because Mishenichnas Adar Marbim B'Simcha. It's not about Pesach in Nisan. It's about the Pesach that's born in Adar. The Simcha of the month of Adar is not just about the Simcha of Purim on the 14th of Adar. It's also because the whole month is a special month. The whole month gets affected by Zayin Adar. And it's interesting, the Rebbe brings in the Ha'ara, we find in the Gemara Rosh Hashanah that the month Yerach HaEsonim, there's a Rebbe Lezer there who says that the others were born in Tishrei, as we see that the month is called Yerach HaEsonim, the month of the strong ones. That's the month where the strong ones of the world, the forefathers, were born. In other words, the Navi calls the whole month Yerach HaEsonim because of the birth of the others. So we see that the birth of a tzaddik actually captures the month. So the power here of Adar is what? Not just because of Purim, Yudalit Adar, but the whole month becomes a powerful month. Because that month, Zayin Adar, which let's talk about Zayin Adar as being the month, that month has Nisim, brought to Nisim. It also brought to Pesach, because the birth of Pesach was Zayin Adar as well. That's why as soon as the month of Adar comes in, we increase in joy. It pervades the entire month. Rashi says, the Rebbe says, no, Adar 50, the Rashi doesn't have to explain this clearly, because he says, when the month, the way Rashi says, he says, Mishanichnas Adar, that's what he quotes, and then he says, it was days of miracles to the Yisrael, Purim, we all know the connection of Purim to the month of Adar, and we also understand it's right away Mishanichnas Adar, because Haman said, the month is good and the month is bad. And when he continues and says, and it's also Pesach, so we understand that Pesach is also talking about the connection of Pesach to Adar. What's the connection of Pesach to Adar? That Moshe Rabbeinu, who's the star, who leads to Pesach, is born on Adar. So the whole month becomes a month of two things. First of all, it's a powerful month, like Haman identified, but he didn't know the positivity of it. And also, it has the repetitiveness of miracles, because the birth, the Zayin Adar, leads to Purim and Pesach. Square brackets, and this will also tell us why it says that the month was transformed. And that's why, as we asked before, why is the whole month kosher v'kiyas Megillah, even though the miracle took place on the 13th? Because the miracle of Purim really didn't start only on the 13th of Adar. It started already when when the lottery came out in the month of Adar. Already that positive energy starts at the beginning of the month. In other words, even as the Rebbe say, yeah, okay. Zayin. So the reason for, now let's go back to understand the reason for fasting on Zayin Adar. We say, if it's a day of birth, it's such a powerful day, why do we not remember the birth with a minute? Only the fast. Okay. So let's analyze, what does it mean to fast for a day of fasting and Tzaddik? So when it comes to fasting, the Shulchan Aruch says these are the days that negative things happen. Shadas happen to our forefathers, and it's applicable to fast on them. And one of the days that the Shulchan Aruch mentions, there is Zayin Adar, they fasting on Moshe. So we could explain this on two things. Why do we fast? There's two reasons to fast. One is because these days, tzaras happen to our forefathers. So it's days that are opposite of joy. There are stern days. There are days of negativity. And that's why you should fast in them, in order to make sure that nothing else bad should happen. Even though we say that the Bnei Yisrael don't have a mazel, so it's not like it's a bad day and something bad's going to happen, chas v'shalom. But what's pshat? We don't have a mazel. It means we can talk to the big boss through davening. We can change a mazel, right? So that's why we'd have to daven on a day that has a certain bad things happen, has a certain negativity to it, so we can rise higher than mazel. But that's exactly what we do when we fast and whatever. So we're reacting to the negativity of the day. There's another aspect. That is, because on these days negative things happen, things not of simcha happen, especially that a tzaddik passed away, for example, Zayin Adar. So the way the reaction has to be, we don't have to be worried about bad things happening. But we need to take a personal reaction, as Shlomo HaMelech says, "V'chai yitin alibay," the living need to take to heart. In other words, this is a time to do tshuva. Tzaddik passed away. We need to try and earnestly and seriously make this a day where we rectify ourselves. And one of the ways of tshuva is fasting. Of course, to mention here that the Rebbe in our generations was very um, told us that fasting is not our avodah. The fasts of Shulchan Aruch, of course, we have to fast, but not additional fasts. But the fasting here is of Zayin Adar is there's a concept of fasting not because it's a bad day. We're trying to make sure that no negative things happen, but because we want to use the power and the intensity of the day and raise ourselves. What's the difference between these two vantages of a fast? It's either because we're trying to ward off, so to speak, the negativity of the day, or because we're trying to use the power of the day. Difference is, what happens if there's two aspects to the day? It's a day that has a simcha, and it's a day that has the opposite of simcha. So according to the first reason, if it's a tinus because it's an inauspicious day, it's a yom chayev, you don't have to fast. Or you have a joyous thing that's balancing out the negative thing. There's also good things that happen today. No reason to get all tzachish, to get all nervous. However, I mean, don't tell me it's a bad day. There's also good things that happen today, so it's average. No need to fast. However, if you talk about the tinus as being a day for a serious introspection, for a day of teshuvah, because it's a powerful day, okay, then you would have to fast because the concept of taking to heart and doing teshuvah because of the passing of tzaddik, for example, that's that still exists. It's also a day of joy. We find in by Simchas Beis Sheva, and about Simchas Beis Sheva, there's no question that this was the greatest simcha ever, the simcha of the drawing of the water by Sukkot. It says if you didn't see that joy, you never saw joy. That's the greatest joy. Nevertheless, what was one of the things that they spoke about during the dancing? Happy is one who never sinned, but if whoever sinned should return to Hashem, they'll be forgiven. In other words, joy and teshuvah, being introspective and coming back to Hashem, are not uh, uh, um, mutually exclusive to each other. So we can also understand about Zayin Adar, since we find that it's Taka Yom Simcha, birth of Moshe. It's not just the Yom Simcha; it's such a powerful day that it overpowered Haman's plans. And the whole month, it doesn't just take the day; it takes the whole month, and the whole month becomes a month of Marbim B'Simcha LaHalacha. So we understand that the tinus of Zayin Adar, because Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, it's not because it's a bad day. No, Zayin Adar is an amazing day, which makes the whole month amazing, which transformed the whole diabolical plan of Haman. It became, and it led to Pesach. It's an unbelievable day. So obviously, the fast is not because it's a bad day. The fast because we have to open up the gates of tshuva, become more introspective, use the day to bring ourselves to tshuva. The fact that Moshe Rabbeinu is born, that helps the tshuva. It should be in a better way. It should be with simcha. Fast doesn't negate the simcha. Just like all mitzvahs have to be done with simcha. So you have the simcha, but you're doing it in a way of fasting so you don't get distracted by food and so on. Right? And as Rashi says about the day of Purim, Rashi says, Kedayu Yemelated, that the day of birth is powerful. It mechaper, it tones or it covers up or it transforms even the day of passing. In other words, that the day of passing becomes influenced by the day of birth. So they coexist. We're still fasting, but we're not saying that it's a bad day. It's a serious day. It's a powerful day. Yeah. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay. Now here the Rebbe says a very interesting thing. There's a Chassam Sofer. It's very interesting. The Rebbe brings the Chassam Sofer here a lot in the Sikha, in a few different junctures. I just want to point out here this big chiddush that we just made here. Chassam Sofer says that he's of the opinion, like even though we said that we follow the opinion that the Zayin Adar yahrzeit is kept, of Moshe Rabbeinu is kept on the first Adar, but the Chassam Sofer provides a different opinion. He says it should be done in the second Adar, and the reason he gives is because when it comes to negativity, we don't want to bring it earlier. When it comes to mitzvahs, we want to do the mitzvah as soon as you come to it. Don't let the mitzvah pass by, do it right away. So if there's two others, if it's a mitzvah to do on the first order, second order, do it first order. However, when it comes to a puronus, when it comes to negativity, we don't invite negativity in early. Push it to the second order. The Rebbe says, but this the way I'm explaining now, Zayin Adar, even the fast is not a negativity. So if so, you hear what's happening here? If so, that svara doesn't apply. That you don't want to bring puronus, you don't want to bring negativity early. It's not a negative day. So this fits and jives with the way the minig is. The majority minig is to do Zayin Adar, Moshe Rabbeinu's yahrzeit on the first of Adar. It's not Puranus. It's a day of his birth and passing, which has big power, as we're going to continue to unfold and explain it. I was going to explain. Ches, according to this, we can understand when it comes to a leap year. Since, according to the Mogen Abraham, the Tainus is on the first Adar, for this we understand that also the Simcha, which is related to the fact that it's a good day because of the birth of Moshe, is also on the first Adar. As we said, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does the days of tzaddikim from day to day exactly. Ebazay comes out, so it comes out that also when Mishanichnas Adar Rishon, we have to have Marbim B'Simcha. If, as we said before from Rashi, that in the whole month becomes the month becomes transformed because there's the day of Zayin Adar, which leads to the days of miracles of Purim and Pesach. Especially, we know that these days of redemption, Purim, also exist in Adar Rishon, Purim Cotton and Shusham Purim Cotton, that we say that there were days, there were days of celebration, there were days of saving. There's even an opinion says that Rebbe, that if somebody said Va'ala Nisim on the first order, that brings from Achreinim, he doesn't have to repeat the Shemon Esrei. He hasn't inserted something that's totally wrong. They are in a way days of Purim, even though we understand Taka that the commensurate with the fact that the real Purim is really joyous. So the second Adar has even more simcha. Rebbe says it comes out l'ma'asav apayel that the marbim b'simcha of the second Adar is going to be even more. But it definitely applies to the first simcha because that powerful day of Zayin Adar and the resultant Purim is already felt in the first Adar and it pervades the entire month. Yes, according to this. But in other words, the Marbim B'Simcha, the way the Rebbe explained the Marbim B'Simcha, it has to do with Dafka with Leidas Moshe. The Purim, the miracle of Purim is also a result of the birth of Moshe. Zayin Adar is the key here. And that, as we see, is on the first Adar. So even though Purim, you could say, is the second Adar, so maybe the joy should be only for Purim, if it's only about Purim, but the Rebbe just made a Chiddush and Rashi and explained that the joy of the entire month comes really because of the power of the day of birth of Moshe. And that's in the first Adar. So then it starts already in the first Adar. Yes. According to this, which we said that the advantage of Zayin Adar is the birth of Moshe. Is the birth of Moshe. We explained about the greatness of the birth of Moshe. We'll understand. So now we have a bigger question. Why in Shulchan Aruch don't we find? We only find about fasting. Why don't we find any celebration of the birthday of Moshe Rabbeinu? We just said that this leads to the unbelievable energy of the whole month of Adar, Purim and Pesach. The Yeshleim says that, but this is actually it's for this very reason that there's no celebration because of its power, because the greatness of the day is so intense and so high, it can't come down in a revealed way down below in a revealed simcha. It stays in a concealed way, and it only has its effect. The Rebbe says here, b'derech siba as a cause, but ba'ifan nivdal as a cause that's not felt directly. It causes it in a hidden way. For example, in halacha, Yom Tov is not the holiest day. It's called Mikra Kodesh. However, when we say Havdalah, when we go from Yom Tov to Shabbos, when we go from Shabbos to Yom Tov, we say a Havdalah after Shabbos, going from a holiness of Shabbos to a lower holiness of Yom Tov. Yet, when do we have more joy? The mitzvah, I say, the positive mitzvah to be joyous is on Yom Tov. Shabbos is higher. It's called Kodesh, called holy. But it's not called. We don't have the mitzvah of joy, right? It's less important. If it's more important than Yom Tov, it's more holy than Yom Tov. We should have more joy. sometimes there's I don't want to use the word standoffish because that's negative, but sometimes an exaltedness or a removedness because of the holiness. It's a little bit more separate, a little bit more removed. Not because it's lower, it's higher. So the power of the day of birth of Moshe is so powerful that it doesn't come out in a way that it's obvious joy. It retains its aloofness in a way, its exaltedness. Yud. The explanation we'll understand by first of all understanding Bichlal about the birth and passing of tzaddikim. It says Hashem fills the days of tzaddikim from day to day, that they pass on the day they're born. What's the real pnimi? What's the inner reason for this? Because by tzaddikim, the shleimus and tachlis, the fulfillment and the ultimate achievement of their birth. What does birth mean? Birth means revelation. Before it was in the womb, now it becomes born becomes independent person. So the revelation of their true essence is really the day they pass. That's when they truly come to full revelation. Why? Because we know that what it explains in Tanya, based on explaining what the Zohar says, that the tzaddik that passes is found more in this world. The Alter Rebbe explained because the Talmidim get from Ruach Rabam Ha'atzmius, from the essential spirit of their teacher, more and higher than the time when his neshama is enclosed in a body, which is a limitation of sorts. And then after he passes away, the tzaddik is shining and illuminating in a really much higher level, and it's higher. The illumination that's coming is from the elevation of the ruach and the neshama of the tzaddik when it gets back to the source that it's hewn from. And this shine that comes from the tzaddik after his passing shines and illuminates to all his students that have become servers of Hashem through the tzaddik. And it brings into their heart feelings of tshuva and doing good deeds. However, this shine is in a way of concealment. Just like, in other words, the source where it emanates from is concealed, the tzaddik is past. Just like the sun which shines to the stars from underneath the earth. Whatever that means, you could look in Tanya, the Alter means in Tanya. As it says in Tikkunim, that Moshe Rabbeinu, after he passed away, his shine is in all generations to 600,000 Yidden. Just like the sun that shines from under the earth and illuminates all the stars. I think it means that you don't see the sun shining to the stars. The stars twinkle, but if it's coming from the sun, even though it's from far away, and you don't see the connection between the sun and the stars. In other words, there's revelation of the tzaddik when he passes, which is powerful, which is not there in the time of birth. You don't have the revelation of the tzaddik; it's only in potential. That power that's revealed on the day of after passing, which is not restricted to the body, is not there the day of birth in this world. It's their potential. So, but really, the full realization of the potential of the revelation of the tzaddik actually happens when he passes. So, according to this, we'll understand why isn't there a day of celebration in Shulchan Aruch? Why is there no instructions what to do on the day of birth of Moshe Rabbeinu? Because the true expression of Moshe Rabbeinu's birth is on the day of his passing. But then it's such an exalted revelation, istalkus, like the Rebbe says in the Maimonides of Basiligani. It's istalkus at such a high level, it's not to be captured in a way of being enclosed down below. So that greatness is an exalted way. And in this life, in this world, we don't feel the revelation. You feel the absence. He passed away. But really, there's the power there of the revelation. Because by a tzaddik, his full birth, his full bloom, is when he passes. But it's not there in a revealed way. So there's physically, we have the aspect of mourning in a sense. But it's not mourning because he's here. It's powerful. So the fast is not about negativity. The fast is about the intensity and about using this for tshuva, using this about making this inward. Says the Rebbe that we know in footnote 79, interesting thing, causing this will understand that in the Nesiei Chabad, the leadership of Chabad, after they became a Rebbe, they stopped saying Tachnun and Zayin Adar. In other words, because that's when they became Rebbe and they became the Moshe of the generation, That's when that became revealed by them. There's no. So what do they feel on Zion Adar? The fullness of the birth, which is expressed by his not being bound to a body. But and that's we see even by the Rabbeim, such high level, even before they became a Rebbe. But this is something that they did only after they took upon themselves the Nesias. They became the actual Moshe of the generation. Says the Rebbe in Ha'ara 77, in Ha'ara 76. According to this, I mentioned this earlier. The lashon is that Moshe. The lashon Gemara is that that Haman didn't know that on Zion Adar Moshe passed, and on Zion Adar he was born. What do you mean? He didn't know that he passed. So simply, okay, we understand what it means, but what it means. So he says, and why doesn't it say he didn't know that he was born on that day and he passed on that day? Why does it say it on the opposite? So the Rebbe says, according to what we just explained, we understand. Haman didn't understand. He knew chronologically that Moshe passed. He didn't know what does it mean that Moshe Rabbeinu passed away on Zion Adar. What does passing of tzaddikim mean? That it's really the fullness of their birth. Moshe didn't know that Haman didn't know that Moshe passed on Zion Adar and was born on Zion Adar. In other words, even his passing is a full expression of his birth. Unbelievable. That's the Rebbe. It continues in Yudal. According to this, we'll understand the connection between Zion Adar and Parashat Tetzaveh. Taka in a revealed way. What will we say? Pointing out that in a revealed way, we don't see Moshe Rabbeinu. Taka, we don't have Moshe's name because Zion Adar, in a revealed way, is the absence, is passing. On the other hand, in Pnimius, the fact that it doesn't say the name of Moshe is because it says about the essence of Moshe. Ata Tetzaveh, it's higher than the name and higher than revelation. And that's what we see expressed in the name of the Seder of Ata Tetzaveh. Lashon Ata means you, your essence. It's Atzmius. That's higher than any name, not identifiable by name. Tetzaveh, you shall command. Tetzaveh is also from the expression of Tav Sadachibah, connection. In other words, the connection of Yidden, who are the commandees, the Mitzuvim, the ones that are commanded, with the Atzmius of Moshe, with the essence of Moshe, which does what Moshe's function is, connects Yidden with the Atzmos of Ein Sof. The one who spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu says, you shall connect Yidden to me. And that's the Teichen. So it doesn't say Moshe Rabbeinu's name, but on the other hand, it's referring to the deepest aspects of his essence. That's the Teichen Pnimi, the inner content of Zayin Adar, that's when the Tachlis Hashlemus of the birth and revelation of Moshe is to all Yidden. He's being revealed in a way, Zayin Adar is higher than expression of Gilui. It's in a way of Ata Tetzaveh. So we have B'Poyel, we don't have we don't have the Gilui. That's why the only expression in Shulchan Aruch is marking the absence. But the absence is not a negative thing. It's not Chas Shoma Yem Chayiv. It's Yem Zakai, which we, in order to get that energy, need to be able to be introspective and take it in. Thank you.